Welcome back to Dead Reckoning, the Human Life Expectancy channel. Yuval Noah Harari has named us Homo Deus to reflect the godlike powers we increasingly possess. Among those powers, our newfound and rapidly advancing ability to use genetic engineering to modify ourselves and other organisms and engage in volitional evolution is toward the top of the list. As we use this tool and free ourselves from the tyranny of our genes, who are we becoming as a species? In prior videos, we've detailed how genetic engineering will likely enable us to live longer and how this might impact our bodies, our lives, our businesses, and our societies. We also explored 4 objectives of humanity and how they might evolve as we live longer. However, there's an entirely separate form of evolution that we believe will become ever more rapid and dominant. We call ourselves Homo sapiens, the man with knowledge in Latin. While we perhaps still have a ways to go to earn this name, it reflects the fact that humans have a dual nature where our bodies propagate genes and our minds propagate ideas. In this video, we suggest that the propagation of ideas will ultimately eclipse the propagation of genes to become the primary evolutionary force driving humanity. To support this proposition, we'll make 4 basic points. First, humans propagate both genes and ideas. Second, the propagation of genes is limited. Third, the propagation of ideas is unlimited and expanding exponentially. Therefore, what it is to be human must be evolving to become more about propagating ideas. In fact, propagating ideas may be the current pinnacle of evolution and could become the 5th objective of humanity. Let's start by noting that humans propagate both genes and ideas. In our early videos, we focused on the fact that, like all animals, Homo sapiens has been driven by the tyranny of our genes. We also reviewed the rise of volitional evolution and presented the technologies that will likely help to bring it about and extend HLE. Still, this was only a discussion of the evolution of our genes. However, ideas are at the core of what makes our species truly unique. Over millennia, humans have evolved the ability to create, share, interpret, and evolve information, giving us a singular ability to transfer ideas within our species. In the last chapter of The Selfish Gene, Richard Dawkins famously noted that ideas evolve in ways that are similar to, but far more rapid than the evolution of genes. Ideas are replicated when communicated from person to person, they're mutated when people modify them, and they go extinct when they're no longer replicated. Also, just as some genes tend to move together, such as red hair and freckles, some thoughts tend to move together as they do in political platforms and religions. He called such groups of thoughts memes, and he suggested that the evolution of thought is now proceeding in parallel with, but far more quickly than, the evolution of our genes. He said, quote, "For more than 3,000 million years, DNA has been the only replicator worth talking about in the world. But it does not necessarily hold these monopoly rights for all time. Whenever conditions arise in which a new kind of replicator can make copies of itself, the new replicator will tend to take over and start a new kind of evolution of their own. Once this new evolution begins, it will in no necessary sense be subservient to the old. The old gene-selected evolution, by making brains, provided the soup in which the first memes arose. Once self-copying memes had arisen, their own, much faster kind of evolution took off." Dawkins also suggests, quote, "that all life evolves by the differential survival of replicating entities, and that culture and thought are a new type of replicator. Examples include language, fashions in dress and diet, ceremonies and customs, religions, art and architecture, engineering and technology." He noted, quote, "all evolve in historical time in a way that looks like highly speeded up genetic evolution." For example, languages, like animals, they naturally evolve in families. There's Romance languages that sprang from Latin. There's Germanic languages that sprang from German. There's Asian languages, African languages, Indonesian languages. And like genes, they also evolved based on separations of populations. And they continue to evolve to this day. In the English language, internet, social distancing, selfie, binge watch, and many other have come into common usage, while hath, hence, hearken, and many other words are on their way to verbal extinction. After we gained the capacity to develop, propagate, and evolve thoughts in addition to evolving our genes, we became something new. A symbiont is commonly defined as a close and usually obligatory association of two organisms of different species that live together, often to their mutual benefit. Might we actually be symbionts engaged in two separate evolutions, one of genes and one of thoughts? The conflict between body and soul, the needs of the flesh pitted against our ideas of what's right, has always been at the core of the human condition. Further, the name Homo sapiens already gives separate words to each of these organisms. One is the creature that we call man, and one is the one that thinks. Our minds and our bodies have clearly evolved together for mutual benefit. So far, this coevolution has been obligatory, but as we saw in our technology videos, digital consciousness technology creates the prospect of bringing forth a new species that only evolves ideas and is unencumbered by physical bodies. In effect, mind and body could become unbundled with each other and capable of their own unfettered evolution. Homo sapiens becomes homo and sapiens, man and ideas. So man now clearly participates in both the evolution of genes and ideas. So let's move on to the second part of our argument, that the propagation of genes is limited. In our video, How Will Population Growth End?, we said that there must be an end to the exponential growth in the human population, or we'll exceed the carrying capacity of the Earth. Historically, our numbers have been far below this threshold, but that's no longer the case. Even the highest estimates of the carrying capacity of the Earth are less than twice our current numbers. Given that we've increased global human population by more than 6 times since 1900, the timeless evolutionary imperative to increase the propagation of our genes must come to an end for Homo sapiens. We've also shown that genetic engineering offers the prospect of accelerating our evolution, increasing HLE, changing many other aspects of our bodies, lives, and societies in the years to come. Still, as proximate and as extraordinary as these changes might be, the evolution of genes will not be able to keep up with the evolution of ideas and information. That leads to the third pillar of our argument, that the propagation of ideas and information is unlimited. Unlike the science of physics, which is governed by laws of conservation of mass, energy, and momentum, there are no such laws regarding ideas and emotions. We humans seem to create ideas and emotions out of nothing. So, where do thoughts come from? The exact process remains beyond our grasp, but current evidence suggests that ideas arise out of the reduction of stress. Essentially, our brains seem to naturally generate ideas when we perceive dilemmas, two opposed things that seem to be true. So for example, the dilemma that I cannot live without food or water, yet there's no food or water in front of me, causes the idea of pursuing sustenance to naturally arise for all of us multiple times a day. Thus, a range of thoughts arise naturally, seemingly out of nowhere, to help us survive. So where do emotions come from? Our current understanding is that they evolved to help us make decisions before our brains evolved rational capabilities. We and many other animals evolved emotions or feelings to help us make critical decisions that helped us to survive and thrive. In less advanced animals, emotions are algorithms over which they have no control. Animals that experience fear are triggered to flee, and animals that smell pheromones are compelled to seek their source. In humans, as our brains became more advanced, we developed the ability to temper our emotions with rational thought. The ability to control our emotions is also at the center of the human condition. We use our advanced cerebral cortexes to construct emotions ourselves based on what we believe to be true. Much more on this in our next video. Children have great difficulty with this, in no small part because their cerebral cortexes have not yet fully developed and because they don't know what to believe and what is true. Most dog owners would say that they can read their dog's emotions as well as, or some even better than, human emotions. Perhaps that's why we love them so much. Their brains are less encumbered by rational thought and freer to follow their emotional whims. It's hard not to envy them. Alas, things are not so simple for humans. We, as symbionts of thoughts and genes, feel the emotional tug, but now have the rational thought that can allow us to make better decisions than our emotions could dictate. As a result of our ability to create thoughts, the amount of information exchanged by humans has expanded exponentially and is predicted to continue to do so. There's evidence that members of the human genus started to speak to each other over 2 million years ago. This allowed people to share increasingly complex ideas with their friends and family across living generations. In The Descent of Man, Charles Darwin concluded that human language, like intelligence, ethics, and morality, evolved largely through sexual selection. Evidence shows that our large brains evolved well before our technological and societal advances, largely to assist us in wooing mates with our intelligence, creativity, morality, history, stories, humor, and wit. Essentially, language helps us to efficiently learn highly relevant and detailed information about potential mates. Supporting this notion, human vocabulary sizes have eclipsed any reasonable size necessary for mere survival. The average English speaker knows 60,000 words, whereas the average primate knows between 5 and 20 distinct calls, many of which are closely linked to survival. Certainly, we learned to use words of warning and survival, but we quickly developed a plethora of synonyms to display our vocabulary sizes and intelligence to impress the other sex. No other animal has a signal repertoire with distinct meanings that comes anywhere close. Unique among creatures, our language enabled us to transmit thoughts and information with almost telepathic efficiency. In 3200 BC, writing accelerated the propagation of ideas by allowing them to be stored on paper and in books in libraries so that they could be shared with many others and at different times. This greatly enhanced our ability to build collective knowledge and share it with future generations. Printing further accelerated the propagation of ideas and information. The earliest known form of printing, as applied to paper, was woodblock printing, which appeared in China before 220 AD. Later developments in printing technology include the movable type, invented by Bi Sheng around 1040 AD, and the printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the 15th century. Of course, today, the internet and digital technology have allowed language and all forms of digital information to expand exponentially. Language, writing, printing, and the internet are progressively more extensive storage and transmission systems for ideas, with the result that ideas now live much longer than humans can. This creates a new type of immortality where we live on through the ideas we recorded while we were alive. If you contribute to the world's culture, if you have a good idea, compose a tune, create an invention, write a poem, it may live on intact long after your genes have dissolved into the common pool. There seems to be no limit on the number and quality of ideas we can have, nor on the amount of pleasure or suffering which we humans can impart. Author Ramez Nam calls ideas, quote, the infinite resource, and highlights that a top social priority should be to, quote, empower each of the billions of minds on this planet to turn them into assets that can produce new ideas that benefit all of us. The exponential growth in information is also predicted to accelerate as Moore's law, the ability to collect and share information almost costlessly, and network effects continue to drive new technologies. In addition, as Werner Vinge wrote in 1993, quote, when greater than human intelligence drives progress, that progress will be much more rapid. The equivalent of the entire 20th century rate of change will likely take place in only months. If evolving to be more about the propagation of ideas sounds strange, consider that we're now in the Anthropocene Era. As we mentioned in our first video, the world has now been dramatically transformed according to our species' thoughts. We've dramatically altered the plants and animals that live on Earth. We've selectively bred crops and animals such that they bear little resemblance to their original forms, and multiplied our numbers and our livestock to where we now represent 90% of the weight of all animals over 1 kilogram on Earth, all as a result of our thoughts. A quick glance at the Earth at night from space also confirms the dominance of our ideas on the planet. The cities shine out as a clear example of the scale of man's abilities to imagine, develop, and coordinate societies and technologies. The cities and buildings we live in are the physical manifestations of the ideas we had about how we should live together and what materials and structures can bring those ideas to life. Our bicycles, boats, cars, and airplanes and rockets are the physical manifestation of our ideas about how we might best travel. Unfortunately, the rising temperature of the Earth is another indication of the extent to which our ideas and technologies dominate the Earth's ecosystems. The central theme of this video series has been that our longevity is being enhanced by new ideas that have led us to new life-extending technologies. Walt Disney was apparently right when he said, quote, "All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them." So now let's combine our arguments. In our last video, we presented 4 potential species-wide objectives for Homo sapiens. Since the propagation of our genes is bounded by earthly constraints as information and ideas grow exponentially, what it is to be human is necessarily evolving to become more about the propagation of ideas. We now propose that evolving ideas could actually be the 5th objective of Homo sapiens. It was a revelation for us to realize that most of the major social movements in the last 100 years have fundamentally been about this change. Whether it's the equality of men, whether it's emancipation of slaves, whether it's the development and use of birth control. The idea that women should be able to choose whether or not to have children is perhaps the clearest indication that the propagation of thoughts is battling for primacy with the propagation of genes. What more direct domination of thought over genes could there be than to say, my thought about how many children I have is more important than my instinct to procreate? And there are many other indications: women's voting, minority rights, gay rights, etc. The implicit message behind each of these movements is, quote, "It's not about your genes, it's about your ideas." Or, as Martin Luther King said during his 1963 speech at the Lincoln Memorial, quote, "I have a dream that all men will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." The trend of thoughts becoming more powerful than genes will surely accelerate over time. Biology is all about information. In our technology videos, we showed that the more we learn about biology, the more we realize that it exists to propagate information over time through genes, and that reprogramming medicine constitutes a range of digital technologies that improve our health and extend HLE. We learned that DNA, the code of life, is the carrier of genetic information that governs virtually all living organisms. We also learned that CRISPR, the clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats themselves, not the technology, are naturally occurring genetic codes, or information, that bacteria evolved to help them identify and assassinate viruses that would do them harm. Because people that live longer have more time to propagate ideas, extending human life expectancy will further accelerate the evolution of ideas. Even more directly, genetic engineering gives us the power to alter our genes according to our preferences through volitional evolution, as science and capabilities increasingly allow, which is a pure form of thought dominating genes. Throughout our evolutionary history, our minds have evolved to help our bodies to survive, not the other way around. But now, volitional evolution turns all this around. For the first time, we can ask, how should our bodies change to support the development of our ideas? Also, moving to digital consciousness, if we're ever able to do so, would be the most complete domination of our thoughts over our genes. Our consciousness could propagate exponentially without the need of biological bodies, exponentially advancing our propagation. Allowing for the many planets we may be able to colonize and the possibility that we could develop conscious minds that live in computers, Nick Bostrom calculated that this objective could account for 10 to the 58th power possible mind lives. Bob Truax once calculated that the Earth could support 10 to the 24th power such evolved lives if they were packed together densely enough. This is many, many orders of magnitude beyond what the propagation of our genes could ever achieve. Taking the broadest possible perspective, scientific inquiry now suggests that the advance of ideas and information is actually a continuation of a trend that's existed since the beginning of time. Scientists and academics are increasingly piecing together the story of what they call big history, which examines history from the Big Bang to the present. It takes a much longer and broader perspective than human history does, and relies on empirical evidence in an attempt to better understand cosmology, natural history, life, and the human condition. In 2005, in his book The Singularity is Near, Ray Kurzweil shows that, quote, "There's a clear trend of smooth acceleration through biological and then technological evolution, across 6 epochs of evolution since the Big Bang. In fact, a group of scientists has started a whole new arm of cosmological research into the idea that the universe itself is learning. They note that evolution is a type of learning, and that our universe shows evidence of having evolved. Our universe observes many different laws of physics, but the researchers say other possible laws of physics seem equally likely, given the way the mathematics works in the universe. So, if a group of candidate laws were equally likely, then how do we end up with the one monolithic body of laws of physics that we really have? The paper argues that the laws governing the universe are an evolutionary learning system. In other words, the universe is a computer, and rather than exist in a solid state, it perpetuates through a series of laws that change over time. It's increasingly accepted that the universe has been on an exponential trajectory toward increasing information complexity since its inception. Given this, the most rational, supportable assumption would be that this exponential increase in information will continue. Said another way, it would be extremely odd if this universal 13.8 billion year trend suddenly stopped. For all these reasons, it seems probable that humans' ability to evolve ideas will continue to gain ground over our even rapidly advancing ability to evolve genes. Throughout human evolution, our genes have had the upper hand, but now our bet is that the ideas will ultimately win out. The objective of propagating and evolving ideas could well become the 5th objective of humanity. In the distant future, our descendants might marvel that Homo sapiens' abilities to explore, learn, and adapt gave rise to the beings that they've become. We can think of no higher purpose for our species than to continue this genesis. Supporting our continued evolution is perhaps the ultimate expression of human endeavor and will allow us to fully earn the name we've given ourselves, Homo sapiens. In our next video, we'll explore how we might advance the evolution of ideas as we live longer. In the meantime, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the Human Life Expectancy channel to make sure you don't miss our next videos, and post comments for the topics you'd like to have us cover. Thanks for joining us. Till next time, as we say at Human Life Expectancy Inc., Hi Hua! Please, do what you can to help yourself and help us all to live longer.